This is the Jayhawker Podcast.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Jayhawker Podcast. My name is Nate Bukaty, and I want to start off by thanking our sponsors, as always, the University of Kansas Health System, Black & Veatch, and the Next Generation 10G Network, only from Xfinity. The future starts now. And I love talking about the future because we're going to talk a little future Kansas women's basketball. They've got their season coming up, starting on Friday with their first exhibition game. So who better to talk about it with than the head coach of the program himself in his 10th year, if you can believe that, at the University of Kansas. Coach Brandon Schneider joins us. Coach, thanks for joining us. How are you? And when you hear that 10 years, does it feel like it's been a decade? What goes through your mind when you hear that?
I think it goes pretty fast. At this point in my life, I judge a lot of things by how quickly my sons are growing. And no, I feel like it's flown by.
You know, it's funny that you use that reference because I'm going to get to this player a little bit later, but you've got a freshman coming in who I remember covering her dad when he played at Washburn when I was in college at the same time. So that's kind of making me feel some of this gray hair, I guess, backs up where I'm at in my life right now. But we'll get to that in a minute. I want to start with some big picture stuff with you before we dive into your team this season and all the reasons that we should be excited about the women's basketball program this year. And I was talking to you before we took the air here that I was lucky enough to get to do the Kansas women's games for 14 years, right before you got there. And then by coincidence, I left. I can't believe it's been 10 years since I did it. But I remember, the growth of the women's game was happening even then. But there was this struggle to try to get the same amount of attention. And now all of a sudden we're seeing this explosion. We know why. Obviously, there have been some big name players that really have brought the spotlight to the women's game. You've been involved with it for over a couple of decades. What are your thoughts on where the women's game is right now? Do you see this as a moment, like a big opportunity for women's basketball in general to really take even another big step in the public mindset, so to speak?
Yeah, I think, a lot of momentum around not only women's basketball, but sports for women in general. I think not unlike the game of basketball, you have to create your own momentum and, credit, a lot of the pioneers of our game, as well as some of the outstanding players throughout history, who've continued to grow it. And here recently, obviously, the attention on the last couple of Final Fours, the increased exposure and popularity in the WNBA. If women's basketball was a stock, I think you probably ought to buy it right now.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. It just seems to be skyrocketing right now, which is great to see. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the changing of the game itself as well. And there's a lot of different areas that we could cover here. So I guess I'll just start with a blank slate and what stands out to you the most about how different the women's game is now, what makes it more different now for you, and also your program compared to 10 years ago.
Well, I think, the versatility of the players. I think the game in general, has really become more positionless. I think about, we have a young player in Nichols who, I don't really know what position she is. I know where we're going to play her, but she's just a hell of a basketball player, can dribble, pass, shoot, defend, probably positions 1 through 4. And I think that's what every young player right now, should aspire to be is a complete basketball player. And I think that's what we're seeing more and more, whether it's at the professional level in the WNBA, the NBA. And I think that's contributed to, a real growth in the game.
Okay, so positionless basketball, that's a great jumping off point to another topic that's related, I guess. I heard you talking when you did your opening press conference for the season about how intentional you were about bringing in shooters this time around. And I heard you mentioning to David Lawrence, the legendary Kansas broadcaster, the football analogy of the running game versus the throwing game. And of course, in modern football, we see running still matters, But if you can't throw it, it's almost, there's a ceiling to how far you can get. And it seems like college basketball and all basketball has evolved to where if you can't shoot it from the outside, is there a ceiling there? And I'm curious, like, is that part of the evolution? Is that why you were more intentional about bringing in these kids that can light it up from outside?
Without question. I just don't think people can make enough twos to beat you.
Yeah.
You know, the way that the game is played now. And for us, we don't have an anchor post player on our team this year, which to me is what I'm talking about when I'm referencing football. Is if you can come down and throw it into the post, then that's 3 yards in a cloud of dust, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a way to win, no question about it. But we don't have that on our roster this year, so we're going to have to spread it out. You know, we're going to have to be a team that tries to create a lot of threes in a variety of ways. And we also felt like that as we built the roster, in particular in the transfer portal, you know, playing around Nichols, who can draw a lot of attention. She's a really difficult matchup. So surrounding her with people who can create space.
You brought up Samaya a couple of times, and we're going to get to her because big name, first team, Big 12 preseason player, and we're definitely going to talk about her because and a local kid as well. But before we get there, a couple other big picture things I wanted to talk to you about. You threw out some numbers at that presser that just, I mean, it follows what we're seeing in college athletics right now, but it's still kind of just, you know, ear catching or eye catching when you hear it. When you talked about the number of women's basketball players in the league, somewhere around 220, 116, I think you said are transfers.
Wow. That's what I was told. That's what I was told. I've heard it from a variety of people. I didn't go through the individual rosters myself, but yeah, out of 220 players in the league, I think 116 transfers. I think the fewest amount on a roster is 5. And the most on a roster is 12. So, you know, very different way, you know, to build a team, you know, especially when you're talking about at this level. We basically, you know, have a free agency every spring. And that's something that as coaching staffs, we've all had to really prepare for.
And what are the things you guys have to do as a coaching staff that might not be at the top of your priority list, but they make you do it anyways? You got to make preseason predictions like we dopes in the media have to do. I always thought that was tough in college athletics because you don't know what a kid's going to be from year to year. And there's always players leaving, players coming in. How hard is it now to predict who's going to finish where when there's that many newcomers that are transfers coming into each program?
Well, I think it's a total waste of time, you know, to be honest with you, because we don't even know. You know, who's on everybody's team. I'm not studying rosters until, you know, we get to the week that we're going to play a team. I don't know I don't know who West Virginia's newcomers are. You know, I'm worried about trying to beat Lindenwood in our opener. We'll worry about West Virginia, you know, much later in the year. And I could say that about any conference team. So I think in this era, there's less value in conference preseason polls than ever.
Well, you know, we'll see where everything shakes out, because that's the great thing about athletics is you have to go play the games, and that's what actually matters, right? Now, when it comes to the transfers, one of the things that I heard you mention too is you might have a program that's had a really good year and then they get rated and they lose a bunch of their players. You were able to keep Samaya Nichols around. I don't know if that was difficult or not after the great year that she had as a freshman. What's that process like? Not only are you going out there to get other players, but you got to hold on to the ones you want to keep.
You know, a lot of people talk about recruiting your own players every day. I don't know that I buy a whole lot into that. I think, you know, we've always operated in, you know, trying to treat people the right way, try to fight for our players and give them, you know, every advantage possible, every resource possible. And if you do that, I think kids have a good experience, and they're probably not looking to leave. Now, if somebody's not having a good experience, or maybe they're not getting the minutes that they want, and they feel like that, you know, they can create more value for themselves somewhere else, then I completely understand. But, you know, we had 3 fifth-year seniors return 2 years ago. We've had our best players. Wybette Mayberry's a fifth-year senior, returned. She could have gone anywhere in the country. Samaya Nichols comes back after a great year. I just think it says a lot just about how we operate in our program.
You said something that really stood out to me about this offseason with Samaya, which was you said, look, as the head coach, I'm paraphrasing, hope I get it right, but you said as a head coach, there are things that are important to me. You know those by now, but what are some things that are maybe important to you? You were saying this to Samaya Nichols. This is a player who's coming back as just a sophomore in your program, because if it's important to her, they're important to you as well. I'm curious, did you get any interesting answers there? Like, were there any things that she said, this really matters to me, that surprised you or that stood out to you?
Not anything really surprising. I think she had some observations. One little one was, she's like, Coach Brandon, sometimes in the film room when you ask a question, we're not as responsive as we should be. And I said, hey, well, then that's something that you need to take ownership of. And if it's you, obviously respond. And if it's somebody else, then educate them on the need to give feedback. It's communication so important, from player to player and from coach to player, that I thought she showed a lot of maturity in recognizing little things like that.
Why was that important to you to tell her that, to ask her, hey, what are some things that are important to you?
Well, I think, she's unquestionably the leader of our team, and she's earned that right and did so in a very short, amount of time. So I think that, the leader of your team, your quarterback, if you will, there has to be a very important relationship between that player and the head coach. And she's got to support me. She's got to support me in the locker room when I'm not in there. And then obviously I've got to support her and give her the resources that she needs to be the most effective leader she can be.
You scroll, tap, swipe, text, call, and do a lot more on your phone. None of us can fathom life without all the world's knowledge in our pocket. We use phones for just about everything. But when it comes to doing the bigger things, like streaming, gaming, and working, you shouldn't be limited to just your phone screen or mobile plan. You see, millions of Americans don't have home internet. They're forced to do everything on their phone or through their mobile service via a hotspot. Or they go to public spaces and use unsecure Wi-Fi, which can be problematic when dealing with personal or sensitive information. You deserve reliable home internet that fits your life and your budget. And right now, Internet Essentials Plus from Xfinity is free through the Affordable Connectivity Program. Get unlimited data and equipment included with no annual contract. Go to Xfinity.com/free to see if you qualify. Restrictions apply. After program participation ends, Comcast standard charges, taxes, and fees apply. May not be combined with other offers.
I had this patient. His cancer treatment had him in the hospital for a while. One day, he was telling me about his grandson and how a big night was coming up for him. So we arranged to make it a big night for my patient too. I sometimes wonder if I'm doing all I can. Then I help make a moment like this possible, and I know I am.
We're visiting with Kansas women's head basketball coach Brandon Schneider. Their season's getting started here very soon, and they're coming off of 3 straight years of the postseason, winning games in the postseason as well, Coach. And I know that's something that you brought up is really important. That consistency, how difficult is it to achieve, and what does it do for you going forward, when you've been able to stack some good years together like this?
Well, I think it demonstrates that we're a program that's still on the rise. We're not where we want to be yet, but I think the trajectory is there of trying to reach some of the goals that we set many years ago when we took the job.
You have this preseason Big 12 player in Samaya. We talked about her. You had some big name players that left. I don't really want to focus on the past. I want to focus on the future. That means you've got names coming in as well, and the transfer portal being part of that equation. Maybe for fans that aren't as educated, can you give us a couple of things you're most excited about when it comes to players stepping in this year?
I think Elle Evans, transfer from North Dakota State. 6'3" wing, really an elite shooter. Doesn't like to be called that because she wants to be a complete player, but I think is going to set her game up with the 3-point shot. Brittany Harshaw from Creighton has really exceeded all expectations since the day she arrived on campus. And then another player, one of our freshmen, from Kansas City, Reagan Williams, has really come in and done a terrific job, and I think has positioned herself to be a really important piece and impact player for us.
Okay, so you mentioned Reagan Williams being from the Kansas City area, Samaya being from the Kansas City area as well. What is that recruiting ground like right now in the women's game?
It's terrific in the Midwest and in Kansas City in particular, really in multiple classes. I can't publicly give you their names, right? Because they're not signed yet, but there's some terrific players in the 25, the 26, even the 27 class, right here in our own backyard that, we hope we've built the kind of program that'll be very, very attractive to those young women. I think that, in the era of NIL, I think and having local support for local players is something that, is extremely important.
I want to go back to Elle Evans for a second because you mentioned that she's an elite shooter. I saw the percentages that she delivered from last year before transferring here. And I heard you say earlier that you have numbers in mind, like we want you to shoot us. We want to get up a certain number of threes from you in a game. It seems to me like ever since the advent of Steph Curry, the definition of what is a good shot has changed depending on maybe who's taking the shot. Have you had to evolve your thoughts process on that in terms of what a good shot is from the outside, considering maybe what it would have been for you 15, 20 years ago?
For sure. The game is played differently. But I think that's individual players and what their strengths are. I think that's a lot of what coaching is trying to get players to play to their strengths and maybe stay away from weaknesses or things that they need to improve on. A player like Elle, she should take every open three she gets. And that doesn't matter if there's 26 seconds on the shot clock or if there's 4 seconds on the shot clock. Those are really high value shots for us and for our team. We talk a lot about our shots, not about a particular individual's shots. And if Elle Evans is taking an open three, then that's a good shot for our team.
We're visiting with Coach Brandon Schneider. I wanted to ask you about Zoe Canfield because, as I told you, I remember being a little student radio broadcaster at KU, and Jordy Canfield, her dad was playing for Washburn at that time, and he was a great high school player in the state of Kansas as well. And now all of a sudden here she is. And I saw her hit a couple big shots at late night. What can you tell us about her as a player?
Zoe's done a great job. She's a terrific 3-point shooter, can really stretch the defense. And you talk about that family. I think everybody in the family's won a state championship. So, what a competitive household. She couldn't be more excited to be a Jayhawk, and just look forward to having her be part of the program and continue to improve and grow. And it's something I know she's really excited about.
As we wrap up this conversation, Coach, another one of the big changes in the landscape is the landscape of the Big 12. You've got the 2 Arizona schools in now. You've got Utah in the mix as well. What do you think of this league and the way it sets up now compared to what it's been in the past?
I think as you evaluate the 4 autonomy, 4 conferences, Power 4, whatever you want to call them, I think there's some really top-heavy leagues. But I think our conference is the most balanced. It's such a hard competitive fight every night, no matter if you're home or away. And I think that's what the new schools are going to learn, that there's just absolutely no nights off in this league.
Finally, Coach, I heard you say that you're open for suggestions on hotels and steakhouses in some of these new towns that you're going to be frequenting. So are you a steakhouse guy? Is that like if you got to go out for a meal, is that your number one choice? And if so, what's your favorite one?
I think we love to take the team out, the night before the game, get them out of the hotel, take them to nice places. We usually have more of a limited menu, based on obviously the things that our players need the night before, but they're able to pre-order. We're in and out. It's and we're always looking for great places. And I just think that's part of the experience for our young women.
Hey, Coach, thank you so much for the time. Congratulations on all the success leading up to this season. Best of luck this season as well. And we look forward to watching your team take the court here very soon.
You bet. Thank you.
All right, that is Brandon Schneider, the head coach of the Kansas women's basketball team. And I'll point out once again, Friday, November 1st, they open up the season against Washburn in exhibition play at Allen Fieldhouse. Atmosphere is great. Renovated Allen Fieldhouse. If you haven't been to a women's game yet, you need to go because it is a wonderful time for the entire family. It sounds like it's going to be a team that can really light it up from the outside as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. That's going to do it for this edition of the Jayhawker podcast. Once again, we've been brought to you by the University of Kansas Health System, by Black & Veatch, and the Next Generation 10G network only from Xfinity. The future starts now. For this time, so long, everybody, on the Jayhawker podcast.